So I'm going to use this this little project that I always use up here, just to start it off. So, I've got this little house, and yeah, it was a small project, but I'm just going to use it as a basis. I'm not going to say anything more about it. So, if you've installed Navisworks, you should be able to go into add-ins, external tools, and then there should be an option for Navisworks 2016 at the top here. So if you press that, Navisworks 2016, and you can use the building you're working on now, maybe save it as a separate copy. It doesn't really matter. It will export the file. You get this this dialog. You can export the file to a to a project folder. What I would say to you is, wherever you export the file to, you need to keep it there, because if you want to modify the file afterwards, the link between Navisworks and Revit won't be maintained if you move the file after you've linked it. So put it in a folder that you always know where it is on, I don't know, on Dropbox or something like that. So I'll put it on desktop. And in the settings here, it should be set to just exporting the entire model. Revit section parts. Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to save it. So it's called an NWC file. So Navisworks NWC. Just going to save it, and it then exports the file to the Navisworks file type. So then I can come into Navisworks and go and open the file. There it is there on the desktop. And it pops in like that. Things tend to work much faster in Navisworks than in Revit, because a lot of the design information has been removed from the file. So it's much quicker to kind of throw things around in Navisworks and play with it and so on. And it's also in here that you can do a walkthrough, and because you can actually render it within Navisworks as well if you want to. But the main things that I'm going to be talking about at the top here are these tools here. There's Clash Detective, which is what I was talking about earlier, where you can figure out if your models are clashing together. We've got Timeliner, which is where you can attach the model elements to the construction time plan. And we've got Quantification, which is how you make a quantity takeoff. So it's those three tools. It's really only these two we're going to talk about in detail, because we're not going to do any 3D pipe work in Revit this semester. So I'm going to talk about Quantification and Timeliner first of all. If you open up Navisworks and it looks like this, it's kind of blank. It doesn't have a lot of information on the screen. You can actually load a workspace so that it fills it up with all the menus that we're going to use. It switches things on by default. So you can go into View, Load Workspace, and at the moment it's set to Navisworks Minimal. But if you set it to Navisworks Extended, then it will pop all these different elements into the menu system along the side here. Quantification work is at the bottom, clash detections on the side, and we've got some properties, viewports, and so on. So that's in View, Load Workspace, Navisworks Extended, and that'll give you pretty much all the stuff in there. Okay. So over here on the left, we have something called a selection tree, and if I press this little plus button, it starts to open up, everything that's in the model. The terrain level, the ground floor level, first floor level, etc. So if I select ground floor level, it opens it up, and all the information that we have in the model is in here, waiting to be used in for whatever we want to do with it. So let's say we select some walls, for example. We can come in here, and if I just click on a wall type, let's say I've called this walls very, I wasn't ever going to use Navisworks in this, so I didn't give them very detailed descriptions, but you should really give your walls the correct description so you know what you're doing all the time. But you can select walls by type by clicking here, like this. You can see it's selecting different wall types as I'm going through it. Or what you can do is, and at the moment, because I'm only selecting them on ground floor level, it's only selecting the walls that I've built on ground floor and so forth. So you can apply those to things. If I then come down here and select it in more detail, what I can do is I can either, there's a couple of options in here. Let me just open up the sets here. Where have we got the sets? Sets, here it is here. This button over here on the left called Sets, this is a way of organizing all the models into kind of groups that you want to use. So you can use them for anything like, here it is here, Sets. You can use them for anything like, just to have an organized system so that you never have to go around selecting individual elements every time. Once you do it once, as long as you don't move your file, the connection between Revit and Navisworks is maintained, and the sets will be maintained. So when you update your model, you don't have to update anything else. It'll just continue to update everything automatically. So in here, there's two things. There's a selection save, and there's a save search. Now, if you make a selection, for example, let's just say walls, and I also want to select the walls on the let's say I want to select all the walls, not just the walls on the ground floor. I can select one of them, and I can come up here to select same, and select same type. So it selects all the same type of wall. And depending on the type of unit you have, maybe it's the same name or same type or whatever. But if I save that, I can then come over here and, whoops, didn't want to do that. Let's do that again. Select that, select same type. I can come over here and say save selection, and I can give it a name and just say all walls. So that means anytime I want to come back into the file and select all the walls, all I need to do is select this selection set. So we have a way of organizing things into folders quickly enough. What I'll say to you is that's useful, but it's not the most efficient way to do it, because if we go through and we make modifications to the model and we add more walls, we will have to then come through and add those walls manually to the selection set afterwards, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So the best way to do it is actually to make a search. So what you want Navisworks to do is to automatically search for all the wall types rather than you having to do it manually. So let's see if I can remember how to do that. So we have a button down here called Find Items, and let me just pin that there. So Find Items, and we have a similar setup down here as we have up here, but we also have these options over here: categories, properties, conditions, and values. So we can actually make a search that has various parameters aligned to it, and you can do lots and lots of stuff with it. But there's you can do simple things as well. If I say I'm going to select one of these walls, over here in the element, the properties panel, you can see that all the element properties from Revit have come in as well. So we can come in here to categories, select it. Let me just stretch that out so it's readable. If I say I'm going to select it by element, and we can say, let's just say we select it by category. I think that category works. We make it equal to, and then we give it a value, walls. If I say find all, it selects all the walls. And it looks the same as the previous one, but this time if I press save this search and change it to, all walls, the difference is is that if I change the model and add more walls to the project, when I bring it back into Navisworks again, it will remember to search for the walls rather than just the specific walls I chose. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Let me just pause that for a second. All right. Now, I'm only going to touch on a couple of topics here, and then I'm going to get you to do it, because it seems easy when I'm doing it on the screen here, but it actually, there's so many things that you can press wrong buttons that it can be quite complex. And for me, I'd like it to get it so that you, at least you get the basics of this down, because then your brain will start working and the logic of it will start to lead in all kinds of different directions, all kinds of stuff you can do here. So I want you to get to the situation where you can actually select the elements you want, and then we can assign them to things. Okay? So that's the first thing, is selection. The second thing we're going to do today is we're actually going to start making a quantity takeoff. So if you've used the workspace, the extended workspace, which I've got up here, you should have something like this, looking at you with all these panels all in place. I'm just going to shut down the find tool there. At the bottom here, these three buttons: quantification workbook, item catalog, and resource catalog. These are what you use for the quantity takeoff. And the most important one is the quantification workbook. So if I press quantification workbook, we get this blank sheet at the moment. I'm going to pin that so it sticks in place. So let's just stretch it up a little bit. So what we need to do, you can see here, it's actually asking us for a work breakdown structure. Again, this is to do with time, it's to do with organization. So we need to press project setup and set up a work breakdown structure. So I press this, project setup. It's giving us American breakdown structures, standard American breakdown structures. The file I gave you, the link I gave you, gives you a Danish breakdown structure based on the SFB code, or in English. It's also an English breakdown structure based on the SFB code. So we can come down here and say browse to catalog, find wherever you've downloaded it. There it is there, VS catalog. I seem to have downloaded it several times. It's in the lecture, at the end of the lecture I just gave. And then if I press next, it says quantification now has all the information required to set up your takeoff database. Just click the finish button. If I press finish, you can see that the the SFB code has appeared over here in the quantification workbook. Okay, so it's got the same levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's got some of the internal elements, because I didn't go to town and make everything in there. But I got enough to start with. And that means we can start to set up the quantification workbook. Okay? Okay, I'm going to keep going with this just because I need to do something. And we don't have time to stop and wait for everybody. So if now we've got the walls selected here, and we have the work breakdown structure set up over here. So we have it set up in the usual way under primary elements, secondary elements, and so forth. And this relates directly to the, let me just open up the SFB elemental breakdown. So on fronter I have this elemental breakdown, which is the same system. So you can see here substructure is 10. Superstructure is 20, or it's actually 2, but it's 21, 22, 23, 24, and so on. So this breakdown that we have on fronter is how you can organize your project. So it is the same structure over here, and all these subfolders are the same. I've only set up a few of them. I haven't set up all of them. But once we do that, we can find the correct position. So if we have superstructure, primary elements, external walls, and I've already selected these walls, I should be able to right click and say take off selected model items. So I say take off selected model items. And it transfers all those walls under the external walls here, if you see. So now they've all been popped in. They all have these crazy names because I haven't been careful about making the names that time I made this project. All the information, the length, the width, the thickness, the height, all that stuff has been transferred into the table over here. So now we've taken off all the external walls for the entire building. We can do the same thing with the roofs. So let's say, actually before I do that, what we can do then is we've got these two buttons here called hide takeoff and show takeoff. You can use this to see whether you've gone through the entire building logically. So if I say hide takeoff, it makes those elements that we've already taken off disappear one after the other. So as you go through it, you know, the various elements of the house should disappear. You can do the opposite, say show takeoff, and it only shows the elements that we've actually put into the takeoff there. So that's all the walls. We've actually taken all the walls this time. So hide takeoff. So then, let's say we want to.
It doesn't go from each type of wall, or.
Yeah, it should go to each type of wall, but I was just a little bit lazy as to the way I set up the search there. So I set up the search and it shows all the walls.
Okay.
But you have to be careful as to which you do it. And when we get later on in the next project, I'm actually going to get you to make them all in separate files anyway, so it'll be easier to understand. But in there, yeah, let's say if we say all walls, let's just click that off again. So let's just do it again with the roof. So I'm going to select the roof. This time I'm just going to go to select the same type, and we've got two roofs of the same type in there. Again, I can save that selection set, or I can set up a search to do it, but this time around I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to say save selection, roofs, main, and now I can come down to superstructure, roofs, right click, take off selected model items. And now we've got the roofs within the work breakdown structure as well. So hide takeoff, you can see that we've still got the profiles around the edges of the roof and so on. Everything else is in there. But you can methodically continue through the entire project until you've taken off all the main elements. And you should have something that looks a little bit like that. I've only done two of them, but I don't need to do any more because the process is the same. It's quite a simple process. Once you're finished, over here we have a button which is called Export Quantities to Excel. If I press that, it's asking me where do I want to save it. Project folder. Give it a name. New quantity report. It's asking me do I want to open the file. I say yes. So here we have an Excel database showing us all the information regarding the models that we've taken off within the work breakdown structure. And this we can use to set up a costing basis for the elemental cost plan. So that's actually a quantity takeoff. There's more information in here than you need, and we have pivot tables in here that will organize the information in better ways for us. So it sets it up according to category and so forth. But you can see that actually you've now got the quantities directly from the model. You don't have to do any more work. All you have to do is figure out how much it's going to cost, how many people are going to be involved, how much they have to be paid, and so forth and so forth. And that's a quantity takeoff, effectively, in principle. So if everybody can get to the situation where they make a quantity takeoff of this model today, I'll be happy. Okay?
Yeah, and just for the work